Welcome to the SAFeTy Chronicles, exploring how to keep people and pets safe from the cycle of interpersonal violence. I am your host, Allie Phillips, founder and CEO of Sheltering Animals and Families Together, the SAFeTy Program, a nonprofit organization working with domestic violence shelters to eliminate the pet housing barrier to safety. As the founder, I have led the global movement in helping domestic violence shelters create on-site pet housing while elevating the criminal justice response to how animal abuse links to crimes against people. I am a former prosecuting attorney, internationally recognized legal expert, and public speaker, award-winning author, and advocate for protecting vulnerable victims. In this podcast, we will explore how and why animals are harmed in the cycle of family violence and the human-animal bond that keeps victims in harm's way with their pets. Guest speakers and I will share strategies for shelters and professionals working to safeguard survivors, why pet-inclusive sheltering is life-saving, and safety tips for those who need help. None of the content will be graphic. If you are in harm's way, please contact your nearest domestic violence shelter or call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Let's get started. Hello again. All right. Thanks for being here. So this topic is a little more lighthearted because I want to talk about the human-animal bond. Okay. I want to talk about how pets are part of the family. Now, this is a foundational concept, not only of how animal abuse links to other forms of violence. You know, when we care about our pets, it can put us in harm's way if we are in a dangerous situation. But it's also the foundation of the SAFeTy program, that human-animal bond. You know, we wouldn't want to evacuate a dangerous situation without our pets. I think we all saw that play out during Hurricane Katrina. Remember that? When was that? Back in 2005? Oh my gosh. Okay, I have to diverge for a second. I was scheduled to host a national child abuse conference where I was going to actually speak on the link. But I was in charge of this conference. It was called Equal Justice for Children. And we were holding it in, I cannot remember the name of the city in Mississippi. But the hotel floated away. I remember I watched it on the news and it's like, I think our conference is canceled. Well, I ended up actually traveling to Mississippi and helping with the animal relief effort. But it was in that moment that I think a lot of people realized, oh my gosh, there were people who stayed behind to protect their pets and they died or they got injured. And that changed everything. That changed everything. And now people can evacuate and are expected to evacuate natural disasters and take their pets with them. It is expected. And there are great organizations that set up the housing facilities for that. And it's because pets are part of the family, right? I think you agree with me on that. I know they're part of my family. So over 90 million Americans right now in 2023 have a pet. That's 70% of American homes have at least one pet. The National Pet Owner Survey comes out with those numbers every year, and the numbers keep going up. Okay, I remember just a few years ago, it was 60%. So the numbers keep going up. One study found that 67% of homes with kids under 6 have at least one pet. And the number goes up the older the kids get, because then kids are being taught how to take care of animals. We find that women are the primary caretaker of pets. And that actually comes into play in domestic violence situations. When the women are the primary caretaker, they have a stronger bond. And so when they are in harm's way, they don't want to leave their pet behind. Now, with the human-animal bond, and I'd love a comment below if you agree with this. We look to our pets for comfort and support and security and safety, especially when we're going through a tough time. Maybe we're sick. I mean, how many of you have your pet actually lay on you when you're sick. I mean, when I don't feel well, I've got a blanket of cats on me. They just will not leave me alone. But pets naturally and instinctively have a therapeutic value to them. And they come to us, they want to help, they want us to feel better. They provide that comfort. So when we're not feeling well, when we've gone through a trauma, whether it's physical or emotional, if we've been in a situation where we've been victimized, they are there for us. They are the unconditionally loving family member that sometimes we wish the humans were, right? So they're there with just unconditional love and support. They positively impact our physical health. I mean, they lower blood pressure, they lower stress, they reduce anxiety, they reduce depression, they help us feel better. This is why therapy animal programs, which I am going to be talking about that in this podcast, but it's why therapy animal programs are so strong in schools, like in the reading programs to help kids who are struggling with reading. Those therapy animals are non-judgmental. They're like, read me that book. I'm all good if you're stumbling over your words. Therapy animal programs in hospitals and assisted living facilities and hospice facilities, and rehab facilities. Walter Reed has an amazing therapy animal program for the wounded veterans. So, pets provide a very positive physical, emotional, and mental health benefit. They provide us with greater life satisfaction. I've done a lot of work with the elderly. A lot of it in my health and wellness business, which you probably didn't know. I have a health and wellness business. Older people or anybody who is living alone, frankly, should have a pet. They really should, because it gives them a reason to wake up in the morning, a reason to live. They have greater life satisfaction. And there's loads of research studies that have talked about that. But pets also help us cope with grief and loss better. So in a situation of child abuse, that child is likely going to their pet for comfort after they've been harmed. In a domestic violence situation, that child who is hearing the domestic violence or witnessing it, their pet is comfort. For the adult, their pet is comfort. They help us with the grief. So if a child or an adult is having to flee an abusive home, they need to take their pet with them into shelter, because that bond is going to help them recover and heal. It's going to help them with resiliency. It's going to help them handle the grief of literally leaving everything behind and leaving that life behind. So, when we look at kind of the lighter side of pet ownership, 80% of us, and I would say that number is higher. I don't know if anybody's done a recent survey on this, a recent research study, but at least 80% of us derive happiness and emotional support from our pets. I would say that's probably getting closer to 100% at this point, especially after the pandemic. 66% of pet owners report stress relief simply by having a pet around them. And 55% have lower anxiety because of a pet. This is why there has been a surge of, emotional comfort animals and, assistance animals and therapy animals. But we love to take care of our pets. In 2022, we spent almost $137 billion with a B, $1 billion on our pets. 137 billion. That's almost double from 2018. In 2018, it was 72 billion. And 4 years later, we're at 137 billion because we love our pets and we will do what we need to do to care for them. We buy holiday gifts for them. We buy birthday gifts for them. Some people dress them up. I have a cat named Rudy. I need to get, he's literally sitting here. I need to get him on the back of my chair. He loves to wear costumes. Don't ask me why. He just does. I open up the cupboard with his costumes and he is right there. He wants me to put one on him. I don't know what to tell you. He's a strange cat. But you know, we have this bond and we want to take care of them. We spend money on them. It's a bond. When we look at kids and pets, so pets are very powerful for kids. It helps them with learning. So, you know, if we look at the average influences of newborn babies, you know, toddlers, children, from the decorations in their cribs and their bedrooms, you know, usually themed with an animal. We look at their books, their toys, their cartoons, their artwork, their videos, their costumes, especially at Halloween. Furry, feathered, four-legged creatures fill their lives. Okay. Animals provide self-esteem for children. You know, children relate to animals. And, you know, in the past 20, 30, 40 years, researchers have really been able to articulate what we've known all along. Animals further a child's development in a very positive and conclusive way. I mean, it just gives them better self-esteem. You know, if a child is having difficulties in school, maybe other children are abusive, bullying, just not behaving well, they're having troubles with teachers, they can come home to their dog, their cat, their rabbit, their ferret, and get that positive reinforcement for their self-esteem. You know, pets provide social support. Even kids who don't have pets at home are often exposed to animals through friends, through family, through neighbors, through school programs, you know, bring in animals, nature, wildlife. I love seeing, you know, little kids, they see squirrels outside and they're like they're running toward the squirrel, like they want to hug the squirrel, and it's like, no, leave the squirrel alone. But they're naturally drawn. You know, but animals help children cope with grief and loss. Sometimes the first moment that a child experiences grief is the passing of an animal. But when children are, you know, have that human animal bond, they are more compassionate, they are more kind, they are more nurturing, they are more likely to go into a helping profession. You know, because animals, and even animals in nature, are important vehicles for children to learn compassion and kindness. Okay. Being with animals improves cognitive, social, emotional, and moral development in children. And what is interesting, there was a study many years ago that found that a child in America is more likely to grow up with a companion animal than with a father. So, you know, when we look to this human-animal bond, and I look at it from the perspective of pet-inclusive domestic violence shelters, there was a study. Now, this was 10 years ago, but very, very instructive. And it was looking at the bond between domestic violence survivors and getting into safe housing. And the women who had strong bonds to their pets had abusers use the control tactics to threaten their pets. I talked about that in the second podcast, if you want to go back and listen to it. But the pets were helping these survivors in their recovery. And the survivors wanted to be asked about pets at intake into a domestic violence shelter. They wanted their veterinarians to have safe housing options. They wanted their domestic violence shelter to allow them to bring their pets in. And they felt like they had a lack of control over their decision on whether they left the abusive home or stayed with their pets. So this is why the SAFeTy program lifts that barrier to safety. Okay. I remember in that study, there were several survivors who were quoted, and one said, and I quote, "I stayed alive over a fish. When I had nothing else, I had a fish. It kept me going." And another one said, "If I had known about the SAFeTy program ahead of time, that would have saved my animals through the years that I've lost to my abuser." This human-animal bond is powerful. It's powerful. In the comments below, I'd love to know how many pets you have. Okay, so, please, I love this. I love seeing people so bonded to their pets. It's beautiful, but it can be exploited. Okay, so at the end of the day, be safe, keep your pets safe. All right, so this is a huge topic, the human-animal bond, but I just wanted to touch on it briefly because it is a foundation of what we call the dark and the light side of the link. The light side, the positive side is this bond, but it can be exploited and targeted in the link. And it is one of the foundational reasons for why the SAFeTy program was created. All right, take care. Hug your pets. Thanks for listening.